A new policy for gender records on Hong Kong identity cards. And top leaders of China and the U.S. discuss Taiwan, AI, and security issues over the phone. The Hong Kong Immigration Department has so far received calls for help from 12 Hong Kong people traveling in Taiwan. Some travel agencies have canceled their tours to Yilan this month. TVB News spoke to some Hong Kong people living in Taiwan earlier today. More details from Timothy Lee.
The quake centered near Hualien in eastern Taiwan, but even the southern part of the island felt the tremor. A Hong Konger who lives in the southern city of Kaohsiung said he felt the earthquake at his home. He said the alarm was only raised about 8 seconds after the tremor, and the streets were relatively calm. Hong Kong travel agency WWPKG has a tour group of about 8 dozen people in Yilan County. There was a power cut in the hotel as a result of the earthquake. The firm's managing director, Yun Chong-ning, said strong tremors were felt at around 7:55 a.m., and the group was stranded in the hotel for 2 hours. 2 tour groups in Hualien need to change their itineraries. The company has canceled all its 4 group tours of Hualien this month out of safety concerns. Another travel agency, EGL, currently has 11 tour groups in Taiwan with about 300 guests. The company's executive director, Steve Hoon, said they also have a cruise ship tour near Okinawa. An island visit was affected for fear of tsunami. The Tourist Industry Council of Hong Kong said the city has about 30 tour groups with about 900 guests in Taiwan. Despite warnings that there could be more tremors in the next few days, some Hong Kong people were still heading to Taipei this afternoon, hoping that things will be all right as Taipei is not close to the epicenter. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
After the earthquake hit Taiwan's Hualien County, the Hong Kong Observatory received more than 100 reports from citizens who felt a few seconds of tremors. The observatory also issued a report for a minor tsunami. Around 1 p.m., the forecasters said an irregular tide level of around 7 centimeters in height was observed in the waters off Shek Pik on Lantau Island.
Because the intensity of the tsunami is pretty mild, it's just about 7 centimeters, so there's nothing to worry about. As a matter of fact, we see much more significant sea level rise during the onslaught of typhoons, all right? With the approach of typhoons, sea level can rise to up to 3 meters or even more as a result of climate change and so on.
The forecaster graded the city tremors a 3 on the modified Mercalli intensity scale. That means the quake resembled vibrations caused by passing light trucks. The highest recorded sea level changes of 30 centimeters were logged in 1960 and 1988. A full sex reassignment surgery is no longer a must to apply for a change in gender on ID cards for transgender residents. This as the government amended the policy following last year's court verdict with immediate effect. Jackie Lin reports.
Earlier, the Immigration Department rejected the gender change applications of 2 transgender people, Henry Edward Tse and another appellant who did not undergo full sex reassignment surgical procedures. In the landmark ruling last year, the court ruled in favor of the 2 transgender residents that the Immigration Department's rejection was in violation of the Hong Kong's Bill of Rights. After 1 year, the government revised the relevant policy for gender records on identity cards with immediate effect. Transgender residents can modify their gender on their ID cards if they have completed select surgical procedures to modify their sexual characteristics with relevant medical proof and supporting documents and fulfill 5 conditions. The conditions include having gender dysphoria, which refers to the psychological distress that a person may experience because of a mismatch between their biological sex and gender identity, and that they have continued to undergo hormonal treatment for at least 2 years. The Immigration Department said the policy change follows the court verdict and has considered relevant legal and medical opinions as well as overseas practices. The government also stresses the policy amendment only pertains to the change in the gender marker on the identity card, and that the gender indicated on the identity card is not the same as the legal definitions of the gender, nor does it affect other policies or legal procedures. Jacqueline, TVB News.
President Xi Jinping and his U.S. counterpart, Joe Biden, held their first direct conversation on Tuesday since last November's face-to-face meeting in California. They discussed areas of cooperation such as the battle against climate change and narcotics. Taiwan and economic issues provoked a more tense discussion. David Garrett reports.
The two presidents last met in November. 5 months on, it was time for a chat and a catch-up. President Xi stressed the Taiwan question is the first red line that must not be crossed. In the face of separatist activities and external encouragement and support for them, Xi said China is not going to sit on its hands.
Over the course of about an hour and 45 minutes, the two leaders held a candid and constructive discussion on a range of bilateral, regional, and global issues, including areas of cooperation and areas of differences.
Biden reaffirmed the importance of the rule of law and freedom of navigation in the South China Sea. He also reiterated the U.S. commitment to the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Xi told Biden they must prioritize harmony with no conflict or confrontation. He called for mutual respect and strengthening dialogue to prudently manage differences. President Xi stressed perception is fundamental. He likened it to fastening the first button of a shirt, saying that must be put right. The White House said there is no substitute for regular communication. Both presidents agreed to pick up the phone and speak when needed. The White House was asked why the conversation was requested now. Was it because of disagreements over TikTok? US regulations will force the Chinese owners, ByteDance, to divest over security concerns. Xi made a point of this, saying it is not de-risking, but creating risks. He said the US must be willing to share in China's development dividends, and if it is, it will always find China's door open. Xi told Biden he would not sit idly by if the US insists on suppressing Chinese enterprises.
Why it was needed now? Why not next week, next month? Was there a particular catalyst that they needed to have this phone?
No, not at all. I mean, they met again in November, and the teams have been working a lot since November on fentanyl precursors, on climate change, on economic practices. So there's been, on artificial intelligence, there's been a lot of staff-level work, and both presidents thought that now, a few months later, this was a good time to kind of check in with one another, see how that's going, discuss the future.
David Garrett, TVB News.
Chinese officials have invited the U.S. Treasury Secretary to Guangzhou this week. Janet Yellen will also visit Beijing. Yellen is due to arrive in Guangzhou in the next 24 hours. She will meet with Vice Premier He Lifeng, Guangdong Province Governor Wang Weizhong, and executives from U.S. companies in China. She's due to stay in total for around a week. The Biden administration has said the trip is taking place in the spirit of responsibly managing the U.S.-Chinese economic relationship. Multiple charities have suspended food deliveries to Palestinians on the brink of starvation in the Gaza Strip. This after Israeli airstrikes on a convoy of cars carrying aid workers killed at least 7 people, including a U.S.-Canada dual citizen and citizens of Australia, Poland, and the United Kingdom. Some of Israel's closest allies have condemned the attack, while Israel says it was an unintentional tragedy. NBC reports on the fallout.
The convoy of aid vehicles had just left a Gaza warehouse, clearly marked with the logo of the World Central Kitchen, when they were hit by a series of Israeli airstrikes. Tonight, the White House among those sharply criticizing Israel.
We were outraged to learn of an IDF strike that killed a number of civilian humanitarian workers yesterday. This incident is emblematic of a larger problem.
7 aid workers were killed, including a dual U.S.-Canadian citizen. Late today, President Biden calling World Central Kitchen founder, celebrity chef Jose Andres, to offer condolences. Andres writing, the Israeli government needs to stop this indiscriminate killing. It needs to stop restricting humanitarian aid, stop killing civilians and aid workers, and stop using food as a weapon. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying Israeli forces unintentionally harmed non-combatants, and writing, our hearts go out to their families, saying Israel will investigate and we will do everything in our power to ensure that such tragedies do not occur in the future. NBC News mapped the locations of the aid group's destroyed vehicles, finding at least 3 strikes over a 1.5 mile length of coastal road. The aid group says they coordinated their movements with the Israeli military ahead of time. We pressed an Israeli government spokesman. Israel tells the world that its strikes are based on precise intelligence, that it takes measures to make sure there are not civilians in the area. How can that possibly be true, given what happened here?
There's a war going on. It's a war zone, and in every war, sadly, tragically, mistakes happen, and we do our very utmost to avoid those mistakes.
Among those killed yesterday, Australian Zomi Frankham. NBC's Richard Engel met her last month as she helped organize an aid drop.
The situation in Gaza is, as we all know, incredibly bad. It's going to require all of us working together.
Her family saying she leaves behind a legacy of compassion, bravery, and love. Tonight, heartbroken colleagues carrying the bodies of the victims to the Egyptian border.
Allahu Akbar.
Preparing to leave Gaza with the prayers of those they came to help. And World Central Kitchen is now pausing aid deliveries. Meanwhile, the UN says this was not an isolated incident. Around 200 aid workers, most Palestinian, have been killed in Gaza since the start of the war.
Still ahead, and new facilities at one of the local gardens of remembrance. It will be Qingming Festival tomorrow, traditionally a time to pay respects to the deceased. There are currently 13 gardens of remembrance for the public to scatter cremated ashes. And at one of the sites, the government has started to provide private rooms that allow families to pay tribute to their deceased loved ones. Jackie Lin reports.
Along the waterfront Garden of Remembrance at the Zhangchui Columbarium in Tuen Mun, you can see this Chinese-style ferry made of fallen trees and other garden debris, adorned with 5 post boxes, labeled with locations for scattering cremated ashes into the sea, allowing the living to express their remembrance of their deceased through written letters, which will later be burnt. Local woodcut artist Perry Ling said the commemorative installation is a helpful community facility that allows citizens to express their thoughts to their loved ones, especially when they are still grieving. Before scattering the ashes, a simple memorial service can be held in this private room. Other gardens of remembrance in Hong Kong only offer communal areas for memorial services. Apart from metal ash scattering devices, family members have the option to scatter cremains with a free paper ash scatterers, which will not be reused. The Food and Environmental Hygiene Department said paper ash scatterers are widely used in other countries, and as the one-off device has not carried others' ashes, it can give more peace of mind to people. Watering pots will also be provided for families to water the grass and mix the cremains into spring soil to nurture flowers and plants. The government said there were 9,300 green burials last year, a sharp increase from the 2,300 green burials in 2011. Upwards of 11,000 citizens have expressed their wish for a green burial at the Green Burial Central Register. Starting the latter part of April, the government will also allow families to change the date of scattering cremains online. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
The Hong Kong Diploma of Secondary Education examinations are set to begin next Tuesday. Students participating in the exam this year must register through the Check-in Smart mobile application. Timothy Lee tells us more.
The Hong Kong Diploma of Secondary Education examinations, or DSEs, will run from the 9th of April to the 4th of May, lasting for a total of 4 weeks. The exam period is longer than that of the pandemic era. Participants can take exams for a maximum of 4 consecutive days. Unlike during the pandemic era, participants will not take exams for 2 different subjects on the same day. The Hong Kong Examinations and Assessment Authority, or HKEAA, believes the arrangement will relieve the stress of examinees. This year's exam registration procedure also requires participants to use the Check-in Smart mobile application. The HKEAA noted the change in procedure is meant to update the registration process.
The older scanner system, which is out-of-date technology, which we may not even be able to find the equipment to continue. And also, we consider the efficiency issue because with the mobile phone to do the registration, not only students do it quickly by themselves, but also at the same time make sure they're at the right place and find the right seat.
The exam body's Secretary General also addressed concerns about a possible system collapse.
In case there is collapsing system, we can always use our manual procedures to replace that. And we also will have our the control center staff to go there even to assist.
The chairman of the Hong Kong Examinations and Assessment Authority stressed the worldwide recognition of the city's examination system, including countries such as the US, Canada, as well as much of Europe. This as hundreds of tertiary education institutions continue to provide information to the city's exam body in a bid to attract more talent. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
That's the news. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.